It's election night in America, and we're back with a live look at Aldie, Virginia, as the final voters cast their ballots as polls prepare to close in less than 30 minutes in Virginia. Here to discuss Democrats' hope for a big night tonight, I want to bring in Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator Sanders, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. If Democrats sweep the big races tonight, Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani in New York, more moderate Democrats, Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill in Virginia, New Jersey, and then also, obviously, the redistricting measure in California. What is the message for Democrats there? Is it all good? Is there a mixed message because Mamdani and Spanberger Sherrill are kind of different?
Very different. I think that the common message, if all of that happens, if Democrats do well, is that there is a lot of dissatisfaction with Trump's policies, $1 trillion in tax breaks for the 1%. At the same time, you cut Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act by $1 trillion. You throw 15 million people off the health care they have. You double premiums for 20 million people in the Affordable Care Act. Those are not policies that the American people are supportive of. And I think tonight's election votes may reflect that.
But obviously, the Mikey Sherrills and Abigail Spanbergers of the world would probably look at the healthcare challenges facing the United States differently than Zohran Mamdani. Is in terms of policy direction, what do you think it would suggest?
Well, look, I have not been involved in the races in New Jersey or Virginia. I have been heavily involved in the race for Mamdani in New York. And the reason for that is that I think what Zohran understands is that we are living in a moment in American history where we have never seen the people on top doing so very well. Billionaires are doing better than they have ever done, while 60% of the people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford housing, which is a major part of what Mamdani is talking about. They can't afford decent quality food at the grocery store. They can't afford health care. They can't afford to send their kids to college. And what Zohran is doing in New York is putting his race in that context and saying that maybe, just maybe, we should have a government that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And by the way, if he pulls that off in New York City, and I think he will, it will be one of the great political upsets in the modern history of this country. He has taken on the oligarchs in New York who have spent millions and millions of dollars trying to defeat him. He's taken on Donald Trump, who has endorsed Cuomo. He's taking on the Republican establishment. He is taking on the Democratic establishment. And what he has done is created an incredible grassroots movement, Jake. He has some 90,000 volunteers, an enormous amount of enthusiasm. So I think this young man deserves an enormous amount of credit for running a brilliant campaign.
And what do you make of the fact that, I mean, I hear everything you're saying and the idea that he was laser focused on the message of affordability in New York obviously worked to his advantage. I have to say, he ran a rather Sanders-esque campaign in many ways. But Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader from New York City, did not endorse him, did not endorse anyone. What does that say?
Well, I think it suggests that there is a strong rift between establishment Democrats who collect a whole lot of money from wealthy campaign contributors and people like Zohran who are prepared to run a grassroots campaign. I think that's true in New York City, and I think that's true all over the country. Needless to say, what I believe is at a time when this country faces so many crises above and beyond Trump, before Trump's effort to throw 15 million people off of health care and double premiums for the Affordable Care Act, the health care system in America is completely broken. Everybody knows it. And that is why Zohran believes, I believe, that we need to move to a Medicare for all single-payer system. Health care is a human right. We're in a competitive global economy. You know what? We got to make sure that all of our kids, regardless of income, get the higher education they need. Our child care system is a disaster. We got to make sure that to do what Zohran is doing, making child care free all over this country, invest in the future generation of America. So I think the division is that there are some of us who believe that we need a party, Democratic Party, that stands with the working class, that is prepared to take on the oligarchs. Needless to say, the establishment does not necessarily agree with that assessment.
Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much. It's always great to have you, sir.
Thank you, Jake.
Mayor de Blasio, it's interesting what that voter there was saying, right? That they knew what Mamdani stood for. And we see that. We were all just talking about it when we were off camera, right? The people who were voting for Mamdani, 90% of them wanted to vote for Mamdani. They were voting for that reason.
And understood him as not a Democrat. He made that distinction.
And made that distinction. Cuomo, only half of the people voting for him actually were voting for him. Others were maybe voting against Mamdani. But what does that say? Just that you have to articulate a plan. Yeah. And Mamdani has successfully done that to the people who are voting for him. Affordability, right? Right there, you hear it. Affordability.
You know, the voters said something really powerful, I thought, about a vision of where we are going. This is so amazing how rare it is in politics, in elections, to actually have a candidate vividly give you a sense of where we need to go as a society, as a city, as a country. And Mamdani talked, I think in very moral terms, about how the unaffordability was unacceptable, that people literally were struggling to make ends meet all the time, including, again, folks who used to think they were middle class. And that's not the society we signed up for. We need something different, and it's within our reach. When he talks about things like fast free buses, when he talks about things like universal childcare, those are the kind of aspirations that help people see a society they could live more comfortably in.
And also acknowledging the pain that they're going through,
right.
I think is a big thing. And then context matters. You know, if you have almost 24 billionaires put in money into the race against Mamdani, that also
last week, right?
That also sends a message to the voter. It's whose side are you on? And I think for a generation that'll use terms like late stage capitalism, they're very much going to, you've heard it, they're very much going to say, well, wait a second, whose side are you on? And I think one of the things we're underestimating is what does it mean to say you're on someone's side? Even though Spanberger and Mamdani are totally different people, they both talk about affordability. They both talk about being on the side of their constituents in a way that is far more identifiable in some ways. We'll know by the end of the night.
The telling lesson between now and 2024. Democrats were all about identity politics and cultural issues. Today it's about opportunity. Affordability is another word for opportunity. Whether it's pre-K that both of us as mayors worked on and making it universal, or daycare, or access to free community college if you're in a B average. This is about opportunity and making it what used to be, you achieved a middle class status, today is a struggle to maintain. And people do not want an economics or politics where it's a struggle just to stand in place.
If you look at it, at the end of the day, it goes back to what your old friend James Carville said. It's the economy, stupid. If people don't feel like they can afford where they live, they're not going to be happy, and they're not going to be in a position to provide for their families. Donald Trump spoke about that in 2024. Zohran Mamdani spoke about it in 2025. It's a big part of the reason why he won the Democratic primary. But I think there's a bigger issue here, okay? Look at New York City. You were mayor for 8 years. Eric Adams for 4. Democrats have controlled New York City for decades. They controlled the city council a long time. Yet, rents continue to skyrocket. Utility costs continue to skyrocket. Taxes keep going up. Spending is out of control. Tens of billions of dollars since you took over as mayor and through Eric Adams. New York State has increased state spending by $100 billion. So, yeah, there's an affordability crisis in New York, but it is primarily driven by the policies that have been enacted. You look at the energy policies in New York. We've shut down natural gas, shut down Indian Point. Utility rates have skyrocketed. So, the grid has gotten dirtier.
These
are
one point you say, though, is last night Zohran Mamdani was here, and he said that he and Trump have both identified the same problem, affordability, okay? That he put it on, that they have identified the same problem. It's the solutions that are different. But he's the first Democrat that I've heard, Ken, that's come out and said it that way. That the two agree on the problem. Yep. Specifically and explicitly, and are going to talk about a different solution.
I would agree that probably in the last 5 years, he has done a better job than any other Democrat in the country of prioritizing that approach to his campaign. And I'm reminded 25 years ago of Jim Gilmore running. You ask him any question in the world, and his answer was, I'm going to get rid of the car tax. It was message discipline combined with focusing on the priority of ordinary voters. Now, I don't agree with Mamdani's solutions, and it is that I don't think they'll work. I wish it was as simple as he'd like to think. But nonetheless, his focus on optimistic outcomes that create opportunity and focus on what people are concerned about. We were talking about paycheck to paycheck, off camera, and that is a focus. I don't care what party you're in, Republican, Libertarian, Vegetarian, whatever. That is.
By the way,
now
I'm going to hit pause on this for 1
Off the
second.
ballot.